Let's rock and roll. Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are so glad you are here with us, and just by showing up today, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I am pleased to feature two certified rock star music executives, one who previously graced this platform as our featured guest, and the other, well, he's just used to being the smartest guy in any room he enters. I promise you will leave today thinking, wow, who knew? And you'll also leave smarter and more inspired than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people in the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. And in this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those questions along the way. Also, please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the speakers. I want to thank our sponsors for without their support, we could not keep this series free. Special thank you to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, MedJet, Tennessee Brew Works, and Project Music. So let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome back Richard Gottehrer. Within a minute of speaking to Richard Gottehrer, co-founder and chief creative officer of The Orchard, there is no doubt in your mind that you are talking to a musical legend, a true visionary who's used the power of a song to navigate through many chapters of his legendary career. From composing, producing hit songs such as My Boyfriend's Back, I Want Candy, and Sorrow, to co-founding Sire Records with Seymour Stein, to producing hits with acts like Blondie, Richard Hell, and Robert Gordon with Link Ray, the Go-Go's, and beyond, straight to the founding of The Orchard. He's done it all, and he has plenty of stories to prove it. Richard, I'm so pleased to have you back here. And joining Richard as today's featured guest is Patrick Sullivan. Patrick is founder and CEO of Bonsai. He's a New Yorker, born and raised in the Bronx, and is an experienced leader who's deeply passionate about building companies. He's the former founder and CEO of Source 3, which was acquired by Facebook, a data-driven company in the copyright licensing space, enabling both physical and digital product creations around intellectual property. He also founded RightsFlow, a data-driven enterprise music licensing and royalty company acquired by Google in 2011. And at the time of acquisition, RightsFlow serviced over 20,000 music labels, distributors, and digital service providers, and managed licensing for over 30 million recordings tied to billions of transactions. As part of Google, RightsFlow became an integral part of YouTube's music monetization, allowing for a substantial expansion of the scale of Content ID. Patrick has built businesses that have generated billions of dollars in revenue throughout his career and helped raise over $50 million in capital. He's held senior executive positions over his 20-plus year career, including roles at Facebook, Google, The Orchard, eMusic, National Music Publishers Association, and the Harry Fox Agency. He's a mentor and frequent lecturer for Techstars, Impact, Dream It, Google I/O, Google for Entrepreneurs, Cornell Tech, and his alma mater, NYU. It is an honor to welcome these two rock stars to our platform. Take it away, gentlemen.
Well, hello, everyone out there. Anyway, I'm Richard, and I guess you might know of me from the things I've done from the beginning as a writer in the Brill Building, and then going all the way through up into The Orchard. I just consider it I woke up one day, I was doing this, and I woke up today and here I am doing this. You know, it's all about music with me. But with Patrick, it's about music because I know he loves music, but he comes at this from a different perspective than I do. The one thing that unifies us, though, is we both were born and grew up in the Bronx, New York. Patrick, my experience in the Bronx was an interesting one, but it was from a bit of a different generation and a different part of the Bronx. Different things went on. Now, after that introduction that Tom gave you describing all the wonderful things you did with business, I'm confused by it anyway. I'm going to rely on you to explain all that. But what interests me more than anything is how the hell did someone who came from where you did do that other stuff and do it so well? Where did that come from and what led to it? Tell us your story.
I think the key for me growing up as the richest kid in the Bronx was I grew up so rich in health, family, and in dreams. And with all that richness, we had nothing. And so all of that was built on the dream of doing things and meeting people like you eventually, but it all started in the streets.
But it shows you dreams are real.
I used to, as a kid, Richard, I would start at 5, dreaming about 8, dreaming about 12, 13, all the dreams with the things I want to be. And I used to close my eyes and look into the stars. And the stars were all the things I wanted to be when I grew up. And having nothing, we'd share a football in the Bronx. We'd share headphones in the household. We just had one TV with a hanger on it with aluminum foil to keep it going. But those dreams led me to like understanding like how to make connections, and ultimately led me to this philosophy around the art of the hustle. If you're not hustling, you're not trying. If you're not trying, you're dying. And as a kid in the Bronx, you hustled the day you walked out getting to school. The possibility of getting shot or killed in the neighborhood that we grew up in. There was
it still goes on.
Crack cocaine in the 70s and 80s was predominantly in the North Bronx and Wakefield. And so you had to hustle from the day you left the apartment to the day you got to school. And it all took place, founding my formation was at the age of 5. There was no money, there was no piggy bank, there was no allowance. You wanted new shoes, I got no shoes. I would get cardboard out and cut the hole out and put the cardboard in to keep my shoes going so I could play on the street with the kids playing football. And so you learn how to survive.
And I see you smiling because the memory of those things as you grow and change and you see this, your experience changes and then you become successful. In a sense, your dreams come true. So you have this this beginning, and eventually it leads you to NYU and Harry Fox, and then you and I meet at the Orchard. Now, this is in not the early days of the Orchard, but about the mid days. What was it?
February 2005, exactly.
2005. So the Orchard was at that point, you said was 7, 8 years old. Yeah. And there were investors that were managing the company at that point. A new CEO. I had been retired and given the title of chairman. But you and I came up with an idea together to establish a sync division. Broader.
I think. Well, first of all, I'll tell you how we met, because we were under the JDS Capital investment arm of eMusic and the Orchard. I came as a global vice president and won a retail distribution store and the Orchard, and they asked me to focus on eMusic. And then I came to the offices at 101 Park Avenue, and I'm walking around the halls and I'm looking at all the gold records and all that, and I'm like, who's this guy, Richard Gottehrer? I got to meet him. He's the guy I need to talk to. Forget the other guys. I don't care about anybody else, but this guy, Richard Gottehrer. So I walked around the offices until I found your office, and I walked in and I was like, hey, Richard, I'm Patrick. We need to talk.
And that's how we met.
We connected. We connected in a second. And I think I also recommended my skin doctor.
You did. You want to know what was interesting about it? You did recommend your skin doctor, Dr. Halpern.
Yeah.
And so I go there. And, he gives me the regular checkup and he says, what's that on your, over there? Turns out it wasn't deep in yet because you recommended it. I went to the doctor and it was diagnosed as malignant, the spot. And they cut like a whole thing like that. They take more. And so far, I've had no problems after that. I keep going, getting regular checkups. But yes, you did that. And we did set up a services division that we did it on site because at that time, the Orchard, which was a great company then and is even more amazing now, we were primarily a distributor. So you and I came up with the thoughts of how do we take that and expand the services? Can we get sync placement on the content that's in the Orchard and offer that to our clients? What else can we do? Can we collect
Clear mechanical.
digital money, from wherever it comes from? So we made up all that, and we used to go. Remember, we'd go out to LA. Annie Lynn would write, "Our chairman wants to see you," and then everybody would see us, and we'd go and we made connections with all the sync people, and we set up this convoluted way of making it work so they could find the content. We gave them access to e-music, which were all our content was. We didn't even make up a list of it, and they would hit it up there. But that was a lot of fun. We became really great friends, friends with your wife, Chastity. And I believe I was even your best man at your wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. When we started the OMS, we call it Orchard Music Services, we were responsible predominantly for helping labels get distributed. But I think what we did fundamentally is we whipped out a dollar bill and tried to figure out where were all the pieces of the dollar missing that we could collect. And so we outlined and scoped. And at the time, my partner, Ben Cochran, I was at Meta, and he helped me found the company I sold to Google and Facebook. Him and I just basically took the dollar out and said, this is the portion of opportunity, neighboring rights, sound exchange globally, PPL, mechanical rights, clear mechanical, create a service, get 15% to help clear, to benefit from liability, to publishing. Remember, we got our first sync publishing deal. We created a publishing catalog with that song, Sexy Thing, and that artist who we made our first $50,000 deal. Our first sync was $50,000. We created all this new revenue income, but we took a bunch of interns and turned them into money-making machines to create this business that became a service provider ancillary to the distribution to create more value and stickiness to the Orchard. And then
as an addition,
globalized it and helped collect royalties as far as Israel, Akum, and PPL in the UK. So it was an opportunity. And it all came from, I think, my understanding of growing up in the Bronx, coming from nothing and seeing the opportunity to make something. Because I could say to this day, up until only one point in my life, my dad never had the money to give us anything. They didn't, no college, no funds, no storybook journey. So for me, it made me better and tougher. My parents taught me to discipline around work. And when I first started work, I wanted to cover this, the art of hustling. At the age of 5, we were supers in the Bronx, which we took care of the building. And I used to knock on doors with Windex and a rag and say, I'll clean your windows for $5 an apartment. I would hang out at 5 years old outside the 6-story windows and clean it. So that was instilled in me at an early age, to delivering beer to Spanish Harlem before school when I was 12 with a baseball bat, a Louisville baseball bat. So all of that helped me cultivate my knowledge. To before in the Orchard, I got to NYU and I got into the business school, luckily as a scholarship. And the one thing I said to myself, being in this managing and organizational behavior class, I said, the one thing I got on all of these suits, they're all bankers, is I could probably rob every single one of them. So I knew I had the capability to rob them. And then I could translate that to a mental state of mind. And that's where I came in and started to do things and meet someone like you, which probably the best thing in my career was meeting you. Because you taught me about travel. You taught me about travel. You taught me about
we took our trips. Your first trip to Europe, we went to Amsterdam, and then we went up to I forgot the town.
The Hague.
Yeah, well, we went to, right, you get to Amsterdam later. We went to The Hague, and then you and I went up, and it was a licensing trip. I forgot the name. Do you remember the name of the person?
Vintage House, was it?
Yeah, and what that was, they were collecting on a different basis. It was pre Willard and Cobalt.
Oh, Cobalt. It was,
yeah,
it was
then
vintage,
it led to
House.
Cobalt.
Vintage House. and they were doing
Yeah.
neighboring rights. So we were trying to build out it. And at that time, that word in the orchard, or it wasn't even thought of, and sound exchange. You and I went to what? Rich and I jumped on a train to DC with the idea that one day the rights on radio, digital radio, were going to become relevant. It was $5 million back there paid out. And we went to Washington. We forced the people to sign the contract before we left. We went to the dinner. Richard did a road show and spoke. And then we sat down and said, you need to sign this piece of paper. And they were like, okay. And that was how we thought of like.
We were in that business, you know. There's so many interesting things that we did together in those days. But as things continued to grow at the Orchard, you went on your own, you left, and you began Rights Flow. Could you fill everybody in on Rights Flow, the beginnings, the challenges? Remember, at that point, were the boys born yet?
No.
Right, but that was the beginning, but that came within a couple of years. You know, you have two.
So the beginnings, the beginnings of the Rights Flow was fundamentally incepted in a way with the Orchard Music Services, where we created a service for labels to license and sell, you know, the publishing side on iTunes and help clear the mechanicals. And so I, you know, had an incredible career there at the Orchard, but I felt like it was my time to go do something on my own. And the idea was, what if we can create a better system for all, including the Orchard, including labels, distributors, artists, and ultimately DSPs, which eventually evolved into. And we just created a central hub. We said, and the challenges initially was it was a napkin idea in my apartment on 95th Street. And, you know, nobody believed that we had the skills or the capabilities. And there was legislation pending, the MOCA bill, which could have stopped whatever now became the MLC and the Modernization Act, all that. I bet against it and said there's a better and smarter way to do this and simplify it, we called it. And we basically became a centralized hub for clearing of mechanicals. And we went out to the DSPs and said, hey, I'll do this. And eventually our first one was a Warner-owned company called Zevolution, a German company. They asked us, could you handle it? We said, yeah, we'll build it for you, you know. So we took 4 people in a room that were founders of Rights Flow. One was mowing lawns, and I was just, you know, the charming, good-looking guy of the group, and said, let the guy who mows lawns build the system. So we built our system drawing straws, and we figured, let's go do this for Zevolution. And they were like, if you build it, you can sell it to everybody else, give us a good price. And we gave them a great price. I took that first royalty processing, $250,000. I went to Marty Bandier. I sat in his room with Peter Brodsky. I said, Marty, I got $250,000 of royalties that is due. I read Billboard last week, you're 10%. Marty said, what do you need? I said, I need your phone number. If I don't have your phone number, I can't call you. He goes, what do you need? Give me the data. He gave me the data. I built Rights Flow from inception, and I processed his payments. And then I leveraged that accruals and unpaid money to all the publishers and figure out a way to do it smarter by putting the onerous on payments from the DSPs through me, and publishers got 100% and songwriters of the payout.
There's the example. It doesn't, these things just don't happen miraculously. And all of a sudden there's this huge company. It's like one step built on another and then another. But the point happened at some point where, wow, everything's in there. Okay, now what? Did you approach Google? Did Google say, well, we heard about this?
So
how did you get to the point of making that first deal with Google?
So backtrack, when I founded Rights Flow, I put a map of who would be potential acquirers from the start. So they were one of my potential acquirers. And we started a 4-3-2-1 tiered approach to marketing and productizing the business. And we started with, like, you know, the lower hanging fruit, small indie artists, labels, I'm sorry, not artists. You know, Muzak was a tier 3 customer. And I had this thing that one day I'm going to get in front of YouTube to get in position for a client and get them as a client. But we built this database by being smart, by getting the clients to contribute to the database that one day would benefit YouTube. But they were we were a customer of YouTube initially, and by working with them, they saw the impact that we were doing, and they, as they would say, the lift in actually clearances to turn on inventory and monetization around the songs they had the rights to, the publishing label deals, or more the publishing on the UGC side. So we were very methodical about that approach to get in front of them. Once I got the YouTube deal in place, I shopped to Amazon and Apple, and Eddie Q was in a room with him, and and I was trying to get we had Rhapsody at the time, so I was methodical about it and knowing when to approach these companies as an accepted idea in a department to becoming this behemoth of royalty processing company. We were processing tens of millions of dollars at the time, which and then we supported Google Play, so we were 2 clients at Google, and funny enough, we got an inbound interest to say, hey, we'd like to talk to you about an acquisition. So I went out and hired an investment banker, which I was supposed to get permission from my board, which I didn't. And that was a whole nother story, but I said, who cares? And so I went and talked. And the first thing we did was, why don't we just have a conversation with them? And lo and behold, they had stated how fast they can get on a plane and be in Palo Alto. And, sort of rest is history, but they were an amazing acquirer from a process perspective, for an entrepreneur, and very cordial and helpful through the process. And we didn't know how big it could become once we got into that mothership, and seeing the size and opportunity to turn on, the inventory and the monetization payments. In the first year, we did like $235 million in royalty payments, which was pretty surreal. When we first got that, it was 3 agreements they had with the majors, and they didn't know what to do with the data, which they already had. They just didn't know how to process it, figure out how to turn on monetization.
Which is sort of interesting. I mean, you came up with this system, but internally, I'm sure at Google, they were trying to figure out how to do it. And then, like what happens with all big companies, it becomes almost more economical once they recognize it to purchase it, bring it in, and then continue the development, So I don't know if anybody out there needs a deeper explanation of this, but it's still a vital part of Google's operation within the sphere of licensing and advertising. Is that true?
Oh yeah, it's the the licensing processing center for them, and the UGC component, which is what we were directly attributable, paid out $2 billion last year.
Amazing. I'm always saying, as a kid, it was 25 years ago. I wasn't a kid then, but when we started the Orchard, and we out of nowhere asked people to sign contracts giving us their digital rights. I mean, when I think back to that, there were no place to sell digital rights, but the same thing as you built this, we knew it was coming, and these changes continue to grow. It's great to see in such a short period of time relative to history. It just piles on, and in the music business, we in a sense have more and more opportunity, and you contributed to it in a special way. I guess I did in another way, but it's made for the same result. How do you help independents engage? How do you help people earn from their creative assets, from what they do? That's amazing. Okay, so you could have just stopped there, but by this time you had a couple of kids, right? They were twin boys.
Yeah, twin boys, fraternal, and one eventually at the age of 2 got diagnosed with autism. And I'm working at Google, and God bless, I always say God bless Google, because at that time, and I'm sure still, their insurance and benefits for families was incredible. Wow. I always indebted to them as a company, and my son Colin, who was probably 8% functioning at the time he was diagnosed, was scary. And I will say the greatest thing ever happened was having him diagnosed from a reality check, not from him being on the spectrum, but I thought I was the king of the world. I was like, I'm so great. My ego was so inflated. and it deflated me very quickly. I think hopefully made me a little bit humbler, but I thought I was special, and I realized I'm not that special. My son is special, and that's when I changed my ego, checked it into the locker, and blew it up, and it came back to reality, and had a eye opener of like understanding people's needs and special needs. And most people who meet me in 5 seconds, I'm like, I have a special needs son, because I feel like it's important, you know, where people today and even in the past didn't understand that, like myself.
But Cullen, today, when I call you up,
He's
Cullen wants to talk to you. And the guy picks up the phone, this kid, how old is he now?
He's 12, and I think he's in my Ferrari down the
12.
street.
But since he was 10, he says, Richard, it's you. And he tells me my birthday. You know, and you start realizing that we don't know these things, and you learned it, that these special need kids may have a special need in one place, but man, they're brilliant in another.
Yeah,
You know, and these are things we learn, but only from the experience of it. It's not that someone tells it to you. So your ego was deflated. You became your old self again, and you started up a new business. Well, right now, let me say, I'm talking to you. I'm in my studio at the back end of the orchard, and I'm sitting here talking to you, and you are in North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina. Yeah, I mean, way different from the Bronx. Do you use the term y'all? You speak like that?
I'm working on that one, but I know I'm not there yet. But
okay.
But I think my wife Chastity, who I have to admit, she was, you know, the powerhouse behind the core of Rights Flow, and me.
Yeah. Well, she had to put up with a lot of shit on the way.
We liquidated our whole life savings too. We put it all in, and we were bankrupt the day of the acquisition. I had $3,000 in my name in the bank.
Well, that's to your credit, and you deserve all the success that came out of it, because you take the risk yourself, and that's what drives real success. So you're in Raleigh, but before you moved down there, and you moved down there basically for Colin, because there was a better opportunity for a learning process for him.
Yeah, well, I think the city, New York, had a great school system, but we were living the New York socialite, you know, house, and Westchester house, and like all this craziness, and living like we were young kids again, because we had the ability to live like, you know, young adults, and had nannies and everything. And we decided that we get out of this for Colin's benefit, or we stay here for our benefit. And so we were envisioning the next 20 years, and we left and packed up shop and moved down to North Carolina for, you know, sort of second retirement, and focus on Colin, which we are able to do now in many ways. But for me, it's definitely an amazing place. Healthcare is correct, and you know, it's like the health mecca of America. You know, and schools. It's a lot of fun, and we're very blessed to be here.
Okay, that's great. Now you did all that, and you started another business.
Yes. Well, so when I started my second one, the things I learned about Google was you could build infrastructure to empower, you know, $1 billion outcome, which is, you know, data processing, royalty payments, and that's how they think, right? And so having learned that, you know, being in the position, I said, I could do this again. And I turned my ego on, but it was a business ego of opportunity. And I built and sold Rights for like in 3.5 years with the actual royalty business we built. And egotistically, we said, I'm gonna hedge a bet that I could sit here at Google, or I could leave, potentially build something that will become highly acquirable, to build infrastructure for impact at a big company. And I'm going to raise some capital, and I'm going to sell the company. So I started my second one, just that. And I didn't tell anybody that, other than my two other partners, Ben Cochran and Scott. So we just said, let's make a pact. We're going to build and sell this. And I started the company from day one, talking to Amazon, Spotify, not Google, Microsoft, anyone who I thought would be a potential down the road acquire, raised a buttload of money at the time, which to me is a lot, 5 million, but it's modest. And this built a product that became acquirable and valuable. And we went on and sold that to Meta. And so it was a lot of fun, but very
What did it do? What did the product do? Tell people.
Basically, it was the same processes we built for data and plugging into a licensing system at Meta. Now it's their global business, but it was mainly a large set of data that we pulled in, and not only copyright data around music, but it was intellectual property around Mickey Mouse, Darth Vader, and we created this taxonomy of information around the world's most licensable IP. And so we would work with Disney and help match it to usage on UGC creations on Etsy and Amazon. We love that. We had like 80 people doing this data matching. And then we built the copyright side, and we saw the opportunity coming in the market where when Facebook at the time said they're going to go build a music, licensing system and a content ID system like Rights Manager, I started knocking on their doors and I said, hey, you guys interested? Not ready, come back. And it came back a year later, and we started the M&A conversations from the start.
Right, and they needed it. And again, it's a huge company that has a need for that, and they're trying to figure out how to do it themselves. At the same time, they're trying to do all the other stuff.
Yes.
So it doesn't become that simple. Well, we've gone through those two. Anything else you want to tell me? We still see each other. I don't see you as much because I don't go down to North Carolina. I mean, but I should. I mean, it's crazy not to. But I do see you when you come up here. I know your mom and dad.
I think not only we became very close friends and traveled the world. Richard, I don't know if you remember, you used to be my travel agent. You'd be like, this is how you book it on Continental. You'd book my flights, my hotel, my everything for me.
Yeah, and how to get the upgrades and
You did everything. You made
collect
sure.
the miles. And you said Continental? Oh my God, Patrick, that hasn't existed for a while. That
You
goes. That
were so
that,
excited.
that
You were so
went the way
excited.
of Trump Airlines.
We were so
Yeah.
excited to make sure I got the best seat with you, first class.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
We used to freak in London all the time. Do you remember at the Meridian? Should we tell them what we used to do? I'll tell them the inside.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Richard said, I think I still got my Sony rate. And so we would use the Sony rate. We'd say the Beverly Hilton, right? A hotel out
Yeah.
call up and say, hi, I'm Patrick Sullivan. And the Orchard wasn't owned by Sony. And we would say, we're from Sony. And they didn't check anything. So the rate was like $800 a night. They would give it us for free. So then we would go to London and the UBS, and it was the Meridian was not, Sony wasn't an assistant. So we're like,
I said, I got a Reuters rate.
UBS, no, it was UBS, the banking company. They're like, UPS is in the banking. And so we would stay there.
Well,
we figured out ways, but we never stopped hustling.
yeah, there. It is true. And even when you don't need to, it keeps you in practice.
Oh, we had people that did look at our expenses, where I know for a fact when I was at the Orchard, there was a rule set: no more mini bar drinking and doing your laundry at fancy hotels. Because Ben and I drank the 2 rooms worth of liquor out of the mini bars one night, and we got in trouble for that.
Really? No, I never do my laundry at the hotels anyway, so it doesn't.
Oh, I was on the road for 29 days one time for the Orchard, traveling around Buenos Aires and London, and so I didn't know where I was.
Oh, we went to Buenos Aires, didn't we?
Yeah.
That was really good. I mean, first of all, it's a great place.
Laura's on, Richard. Laura Tesorio.
Oh, Laura, is she on?
Yeah, she just came on.
Oh, hey, Laura. Yeah. Do you remember when what was the name of that conference? We came down, Patrick and I, and then we talked in the apartment also. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got invited to Russia, and I asked you to come with me, and you were like, what about Russia, Richard? Remember I asked you to come to Russia?
Oh, Russia. No, you see, I actually, I do want to go to Russia, but I went to my Uncle Dave, and I remember him, I told him, Patrick, remember I told him that why I won't go to Russia. And I said, Uncle Dave, what was it like? I want to go back and see it. Of course, I'd like to see Moscow and St. Petersburg. I'm not necessarily, now I don't want to go to Russia at all, but I would like to go to St. Petersburg. And he said, he was an old Russian Jewish guy. And he, what, are you crazy? I had to swim across the Volga to get out. And in order to get any place, I had to sell my shawl and my tefillin. I had to sell it to have enough money just to get to the next place, to get away from those son of a bitches. So
I
I
remember-
didn't go to Russia
I
with
remember,
you.
I was like, I guess you're not going to Russia, because we were going everywhere together. We were like a sidekick, and going to LA, like you said. And when we first went to LA, we actually, we had an intern at the time, Annie Lynn. You remember, like Annie?
Yeah, I remember.
And she wrote the letters, but we had no clue what we're talking
No
about.
clue. And I would go in and
And then,
it's the same. It's those same old songs. Everybody wants to talk to you. Oh, you did that? What was it like in the Brill Building? How was CBGBs and the Punks? So everybody wants to know that. And then I said, well, I'm doing something else now. How about the songs? You licensed some of our songs, and we did. And what was it? What year was that? It was 2006 or 7 by then.
05 and 6. Well, 06 is when we were at full throttle, but we
started. And it's, I know $1 million ain't what it used to be, but I remember our first year in sync, we did like $1,600,000.
Well, I don't remember. Sometimes, like you said, your famous line is sometimes, in order, get lucky, you get hit in the head with a hammer. What's your line about luck?
Oh, luck, it's like standing in the path of the wave. You have to put so everybody who thinks they're lucky, they're not really lucky. They put themselves in position so luck can knock you on the head.
That's it. Because Richard, I remember we started all this. One day we got a fax. A fax came in for the license right for a song from Target. We had no clue, but we had this idea. We're going to do this OMS, and immediately we picked it up, and it said, we want to license this song. We called up the ad agency, I don't know, the BBDO or something. And they said, yeah, we want to license this song. It's an artist, I think, on the Orchard. We're paying $100,000. And we're like, $100,000. And there was an artist, they were, I don't know, in Mexico or Argentina or something. We called them up. We signed them to a publishing deal. We got them, and we turned that into 3 different commercials. I Want More, and we figured out, the problem we had is people like, wow, you guys should be able to do that every time. But we were able to create opportunities and luck that.
That's the problem when you have people up above who say, well, you did this year, next year your number is 10 times that or 5 times that. Well, of course you can't hit that number, but you try. But it is interesting that I'll go back to the same thing. And it's true, I guess, for me, but very true for you. You work hard at it and you put yourself in position so that things can happen. It doesn't happen overnight. And I try to always impress that the people who think, wow, look where you are. Well, you know what?
Late nights. I always say,
a lot.
when I taught college, I always told the kids there's 168 hours in the week, choose wisely. And, when I was in school, I got very fortunate. I got a scholarship to NYU because I got in position to get it. And I went to school, taught 2 classes as a teaching fellow, worked at Harry Fox for 20 hours, worked in the school for 20 hours, taught the 2 classes, was in a rock band, and I was a bartender 33 hours a week while I was in grad school.
Well, that must have been nice work.
4 hours of sleep a night, but I was throttled.
But I mean, did you?
I loved it. It was a great,
get a gin and tonic? Okay.
Well, I used to, all the grad students and professors would come, and I was a bartender. It was the greatest job. I still my favorite job. I would quit anything to be a bartender.
Yeah, I was right. I was speaking of being a professor. I used to come up and lecture. Used to run classes.
For 7 years, so I did 3 years at NYU, and then I went to Hunter College in their music and media.
At Hunter, in the music,
you were the first speaker. Give the kids a good kick in the butt and a good laugh,
and give them the story, tell them about things, and I think that's important for us who have experience in different areas to share that with young people coming up. I think perhaps a lot of young people today feel with technology being available to them, and they can do a lot of this stuff themselves. And yes, they can, but experience and mentoring really makes a difference to young people.
Giving them the opportunity, and especially in New York City, in our schools, and those, the students, I remember vividly a student who came to me and said, Patrick, I have to go bartend at 8:40, class ended at 9:30, and I had to give her credit. I remember her very clearly, that she would leave early, and I knew she was working hard. I also became a great client of hers at the bar because I knew she was a great bartender and I was getting a nice, experience. But, at those times, those are the kids hustle, and they're just like me, closing their eyes and dreaming about what they could become, when you don't have anything, but you have everything in front of you to go after. So it was exciting. And I
It's
love,
good.
I love teaching and mentoring.
It's great to see that, and I'm the same way, but it's great to see that you remember those and you keep yourself level with it, and I, before we run out of any time, how you're into something new now. Could you share that? I mean, it's a new company. It's something that that's a cool idea. It's something that relates to the artist and fan engagement, and without being self-promoting, because you actually aren't. Um, ha, um, Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. The new company's Bonsai, and it's joinbonsai.co is our website, but it's a new way for fans to engage artists, fandom, super fans. And we created with artists over the past year. For the last year, we worked with about 400 artists and managers to understand what are new ways to, engage and innovate and monetize around technology. And we built a product that allows a fan to prompt an artist to ask them anything about the making of the song, the making of the album, the making of the moment. And the artist is able to unpack that from a fan's prompt, and the artist can respond on a voice memo on their phone. And what gets created with a piece of digital art, which is the beauty of it, based on the voice prompts of the artist's voice. The artist's voice creates this artificial artwork that becomes created, and we create what's called an audiogram. The artist can now, whether they like it or not, can submit it back to the fan. The fan pays a support fee, and now they have this digital collectible. And if they choose to, they can own it as an NFT. And that's not part of the package, but it's very Web 2. But you also have the NFT component, and that artist and fan could co-own that NFT, and the artist gets a piece of royalty on top of it. It's really exciting, and fans are really excited about an artist, but it's really targeting the emerging artists. It's not for the Beyoncés of the world. That's not the target. It's these emerging artists, these disc maker artists, these CD baby artists, these artists that really have super connected fans. So I really love it, and I'm very passionate about it, but I won't talk any more about it.
No, but given that it allows emerging artists to identify and engage with a fan, if the fan wants to engage.
The super fans that really love and support their artists from merch. They'll buy the t-shirts, they'll buy the CDs, believe it or not. There's 250,000 people on disc makers that sell CDs, artists. And so it's a new way for fandom and engagement. It's short form content because it's a piece of visual moving art. So it's created around that audio and visual. And it's pretty cool from the fan perspective. But there's a lot, it's a way into a world of simplified fan engagement. There's no investment from the artists. They do it on their phone, and they create the content without having to go in the studio and talk about moments, around.
What do you think of the NFT thing? I mean, is it going to be a fixture, or are we going to grow into it as we get to the Mandalorian stage?
Well, I think the NFT terminology is going to become this utility we won't even think about. It's almost like saying, hey, Richard, you want to buy my MP3? And you're like, what's an MP3? No one needs to know what an NFT is, but it's a way and a utility to create provenance and ownership for the future. I believe in the technology and the capabilities and the blockchain, but the way it was used and exploited in some ways with the past artwork and pictures and overinflated buyers and sellers. It's like people buying and selling their own NFTs to create an inflated market. I think that's going to not exist as much as the future, which will come in. Why not be a painter and have that association that you own that, and one day if it's resold on a secondary market, you participate from a royalty perspective on the resale value, and your heirs do as well. So I think that's the power of what it could become.
Yeah, I was just reading some stuff while you were talking. That's
someone's cursing.
No, that's no, I tend to agree with you, particularly in art. I mean, music's another thing, but an artist sells his work for X number of dollars, and that's all they ever got. and then the value goes up, 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 up. That's before the NFT stage, goes up, 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 and I'm sure Picasso would still like a piece of the action. And what about Van Gogh's heirs? And what about
or the street art, the street artist that's out there trying to create works, and it's very, incredible. And then one day it gets resold. So I think this should be a participation right.
I
And,
think so, participation.
and why not? And I think if used right, but I think all the noise and fluff around what happened the last few years. Thankfully, when we were ideating bonsai, we were thinking not to be an NFT, but have that component because it's a collectible, digital collectible. So why not with technology? So we put the Web3 developers to help connect. So when you connect to your digital, when you get your digital asset on our end, you don't have to know anything about an NFT. No one cares. We don't want you to, and you pay with US dollars. But if you claim it, it's listed on OpenSea. And if you trade on it, you transfer ownership. But the artists who created that original audiogram collectible participate. That I feel is a good use case, and there's a why there, for a moment versus, here, Richard, I hired an agency to create some piece of digital art. I put my name on it, and I sold it on OpenSea, and I made a killing. And it's like, that to me is not the real opportunity for utility of an NFT.
I saw a question come up. It said, can bonsai support independent labels?
Well, we are about to announce a large, yes, we support artists first. We're an artist first platform. And our thesis is wherever artists live, whether it's through labels, DSPs, we want to get in front of artists because it's built for artists. We spent the time talking to emerging artists, the ones that are not seeing the unit economics add up on platform, and where you have to have 50,000 streams in order to make $50. And so the unit economics are disproportionate, to these artists. And, one of our artists, our first artist, is a woman in California. She's like, I put about a month in the studio to create a song or an album or whatever. I think it's a song. And she drops a song a month on a platform I won't name. And she puts about $5,000 investment with her time and money. It doesn't yield any return other than promotional value. And where is the opportunities for them to exist and compete with Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga? There's a disproportionate revenue payout, obviously, because of the way that these algorithms have been created. But now here's some new opportunity, and you drop 10 audiograms at $5, you make $50 in 10 minutes. I'm not saying that's the future, but it's another SKU opportunity that's simple. And fans are like unpacking these moments. And we have an Australian band, Fly by Midnight. Fans go crazy about them. It's like, it's just really cool to see. And I just like the idea of creating a new way for fan engagement and support your favorite artists.
What certainly is important. Fan engagement is the thing that makes that contributes to the success of any artist. So it's great you're doing it. Anybody out there have any questions? I'll read them and ask them. Anyone?
There's a few questions in the Q&A, Patrick, you might take a look at.
What is
somebody was looking for some tech support on a bonsai question. I don't know if you've got a URL or a phone number you can share with that person. It's a bonsai customer.
So if they go to the website, I'm sure there's a support.
So it's bonsai, but I think you have to say it's bonsai.co.
It's join bonsai, BONSA.co, not com, joinbonsai.co.
Right, because when you look up bonsai, it's
Yeah,
joinbonsai.co.
Microsoft owns the rights.
Because we know bonsai refers to a different.
The original concept behind that was around the tree, the bonsai tree, and sculpting,
yes.
and so.
Yeah.
There's a question in here about whether or not Orchard can support artists in sync. Richard, I don't know if Robert Spielberg's asking that. Is the Orchard working on managing?
Is the Orchard able to work and do sync placements? Yes. We have a good system in place now, and we're expanding it even further. So I would say the answer is yes, and sync is part of the service that we offer. Sync placement is part of the service that the Orchard offers.
Patrick, here's a good question. Basically, at the start of your career, why music? Why'd you get into music?
Oh,
No,
good question.
I back to the Bronx and the 5-year-old with the hand-me-down tennis racket that's that someone gave me in the building. I used to jump on the bed and my parents, I begged every year to buy me a guitar, which they didn't have the money. I never was able to do that. So I built a bicycle. I actually pieced together a bicycle, and one of my Christmas presents was a rim. I remember very proudly standing at the tree with the rim to the bike to finish the bike. That was my present, was a one rim, which I love. I was so proud that I got the other half of the rim, because I would street hustle and anything I could sell. And so once I got that bike, I loved it. And I used to, and then I figured out a guy who wanted to buy the bike. I sold it to him for $150. And then I bought a guitar and amp. And so I used to play around, and I was always passionate about music, but I was a terrible, terrible guitar player until later. I did go on and get an undergrad in jazz studies. I studied guitar. I loved the guitar, but I was a terrible, terrible jazz musician. I wouldn't say I was a musician, but I was in a rock band for 10 years too. But I fulfilled my dream from a kid dreaming about one day being on stage. And so I was trying to fulfill all these dreams I had. And I did that for, about 10 years in a band. And but I was still terrible at music. But I did a good job at hustling and getting people to the gigs and the crowd. And I was on college radio and MTV, but we were a terrible band. But not the other bandmates, they were good. I was probably not the best, but I was passionate about music. But I realized I had an early career when I was at NYU. It was really interesting. And Richard will know this, back when Polygram in '97, all of my classmates, and I was in grad school, were so enthralled with the recording artists and all and they all wanted to be A&R people. And I was the only kid in the class who was like, where's the money going at the bottom? So I was publishing. I was like, I used to read about the money. There's got to be money somewhere. And I was the kid who started to focus on the publishing. Then I got into Harry Fox, and I was like, ooh, this dirty back office world of, these peanuts and pennies dropping. I could figure out a way. And that's led me out of music, back to music. But I was always trying to figure out where the money is, because as a young kid, I was always trying to rob everybody, and did a lot of fun things as a kid. But that led me to the music industry and build out my career.
I think it's an interesting point. You brought up the name Harry Fox. I don't know everybody on here. I don't know how deep the experience goes, but they were the system for the industry. When you became a songwriter or publisher or something, you would affiliate with them and they would do all the collections. I mean, this is before digital. I mean, this goes back decades.
I got it. Well, you just prompted a memory. So I worked there for 5 years. They were very good to me as an organization. I had to draw a line. The organization was split. At the time, Ed Murphy was the CEO of NMPA and Harry Fox for 23 years. And they came in, restructured the business, and they gave me a choice. Go with Harry Fox with this new CEO and everybody in the company, 150 people, or go work for Ed Murphy, God rest his soul, and you and his assistant will get an office on Park Avenue. We're going to push you, and it'll be the three of you, and you could be a director at Harry Fox, or you could be just an internet specialist at NMPA. And I sat in the room, and originally I was about to shake the hand of the CEO of the new Harry Fox. I was going to be a director. I was so proud of it. And I said, I turn it down, and I'm walking out, and he goes, don't let the door kick you in the ass on the way out. That's his famous line to me when I was leaving. I was like, all right, I'm going to go work with the guy who's got the experience in the music industry and learn from him about legislation, industry negotiation, and new media. And so I spent 5 years learning from this person who was willing to unpack to me. And while I was there, I was then, they were moving to remove him from power, and the first person to go was me. And but I got my learnings. And as I was on my way out, I wrote an op-ed that I was going to send to I had a whole plan to go to Connecticut and send this email about, you're doing it all wrong. I wrote this whole letter out that I want to privately send to the boards and all the publishers and everyone in the music industry, like, they're doing it all wrong. I wrote it on a plane or whatever, and I didn't do it. And then I went on and built Rights Flow. But they were very nice to me, the folks, and there's a lot of them still there. Lauren Appolito, from a personal level, they all treated me such nicely while I was there, and on the way out. They treated me nicely on the way out too, believe it or not.
Yeah. So
Richard, let me jump in here and ask a question to both of you as sort of a wrap up, if that's okay. If you could talk to your 25-year-old self and give some advice to that young man, what would it be?
Surround yourself with people smarter than you. Be the learner in the room and don't be the smart person in the room. Because you're the smartest in the room, get out of that room.
Yeah, well, it's I'll go along with that. You know, when I started playing tennis, the first thing they tell you is don't play with people you could beat.
Yeah.
Play with people that beat you, that you know are better. So no matter how much you think you know, there's still more to learn.
You have to be a learner. You have to be the learner. Always be the
Yeah.
learner. And if you're not learning, then you're not, you're not thriving and surviving. And that's why I met Richard. I met Richard. I learned so much. I continue to learn so much. Richard told me about good wines, which him and I, my wife didn't know anything about good wine. So we'd always buy the cheap white when we go to dinner with Anita and Richard and my wife. And my wife didn't know. And then one day she goes, "This is what a good white tastes like." And I was like, "Oh, here it goes. That's gone." We crack out of the box. I remember Richard gave her a good bottle of white wine at dinner. I said, "Richard, you just messed up my whole thing."
But that pays dividends as well.
Oh, yeah.
You have to know stuff like that. No, and I would just say again, I'd repeat it. Put yourself, no, you're not just lucky. Put yourself in position so luck can knock you on the head. And also, even when things don't look perfect, and this is Patrick's example with rights flow, where he's sinking all the money in and all this. If you don't get in the game and you don't stay in the game, you can't win. And if you're in the game, sooner or later, that wheel's going to come around and opportunity is going to reveal itself. So you continue doing it and try to only do things that you understand and love, and that will, at least you get the satisfaction. Even if you don't get the money right away, if you have the satisfaction. And the last thing I'll say, and then we should stop this, is I tell artists when we work with them and they want to be big stars, they want to be successful, I say that success is in the doing of it. When you write the song and you make the recording, if you really feel good about it, you won. Now, the real extra success is the bonus of people being attracted to it and you getting the benefits of the success of the money and the adoration and everything. But you have to feel you won in the doing of it in order to take advantage of the rest.
Amen. Well, guys, I think that's a perfect stepping off point today. I really appreciate both of you. Patrick, as I said at the outset, you are used to being the smartest guy in the room because, sorry, pal, you are. Richard, you are a living legend. I can't thank you enough for coming back on here and bringing Patrick. This has been awesome. The chat has been blowing up today. To the audience, you got a good one today, didn't you? And come back next Thursday for some more. In the meantime, everyone be nice to each other and stay healthy. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.